with podcasting, that the reason I like it is that you could do video and audio, capture it all at once, but that can turn into I mean, I don't know, a million might be too much, but a lot of different things out. You can hit all those different platforms and channels
Mhm.
if you have a plan and strategy to actually execute. That's where I
Okay.
think like the AI tools are so helpful.
Welcome back to SEOleverage.com. My name is Gert Mellak, and today I'm very, very happy to welcome Joe Fier to the show. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Gert, thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much for taking some time. We got introduced a while ago by my mentor, James Remco. I've
That's
had the
right.
pleasure to be on your podcast, Hustle and Flowchart, for a few times, back with Matt Wolf and then now solo. And this time it's a real honor for me to welcome you to my show. So I really appreciate it.
This is cool. Yeah. And we've been going back and forth doing a lot of, we're doing a podcast series on my show, Hustle and Flow Chart, like you said. And yeah, it's all about SEO, of course. And the changes, all the way from fundamentals to the tools and
Mhm.
strategies we all got to use to stay ahead
Absolutely.
digitally. So
No, that's
yeah,
amazing.
thanks
But
for
today
doing
we
that.
need to switch roles a little bit. We definitely want to squeeze you out a little bit and see how much experience we can get out of you. Hustle and Flowchart has been becoming over the years one of the most important podcasts, I would say, in the marketing and affiliate space. A lot of people I talk to when I bring up your name or the podcast, they have heard about you. They have heard certain guests. They have some sort of connotation. I remember when I first was on the show, I got so much feedback from all kinds of people. I think even one signed up for our services back then because they were
Cool.
blown away, and it's really interesting. I'm on quite a few podcasts, but not a lot of podcasts have zero impact. But there are some
Wow.
podcasts, and you kind of feel when the audience trusts the person, trusts the host, and so it's okay, they probably, if they invite this guy, he probably knows a thing or two, so let's definitely have a conversation. You can tell, and it doesn't relate to the number of downloads, it doesn't relate to the size, in my experience. It
Mhm.
really relates on what kind of relation people have with the host. So it was really interesting to see the impact from your show.
That's awesome, and thanks for sharing that. That's because I don't always get that feedback. It's
Mhm.
Podcasting can be interesting where it's this medium where you talk into the microphone and we have a great conversation, but
Mhm.
sometimes you don't get that feedback. But at the same time, doesn't mean things aren't happening or things, people aren't maybe going to the guest and working a deal out with you, and that's the power. It's this really cool, interesting networking machine that happens with podcasting and
Yeah.
obviously can do a lot of other things, which we'll talk about today too.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to focus more on strategy, more also on technical things. But I have one question that comes up when I have conversations with clients who are considering should they do a podcast, should they not do a podcast. Does it does it still make sense to start a podcast today?
Mhm. This is a question that I've heard often, and I've thought about deeply because, especially with AI now becoming so prevalent, where we can auto generate our own voice or anyone's voice at that matter, and kind of more or less automate a podcast, and then that possibly can devalue a podcast. But I would refute that and go, no, it's actually more important than ever because when it comes to AI and technology, there's always the human side that we want to remind ourselves about. And obviously, we're all human. I hope we stay that way for a while. And, but there's this interesting bond that happens with podcasting. It always has. And I've seen it in my numbers with our show, and where the engagement rate just is so much greater than most other media, most channels out there, like videos and different things on social media where you're scrolling through. This one, it's a one-to-one conversation with the most engaged people that you possibly can have, either if it's on your own show or if you're guesting on other podcasts. Like you listening right now, whoever you are, hey, I'm talking directly to you. It's not like there's thousands of people, and there are at once, but it's a one-to-one conversation right now. And it's powerful because you could take people on a journey, and with AI, it's supplementing our content efforts so we can do our best work at presenting our topics and leverage AI, because I do it all the time and I'm a big proponent
Mhm.
of really preparing better, delivering more value, and then also the post production after you create this content this core piece of content, you can have that thing spread all over the web. And obviously SEO is a big part of that as well.
Mhm.
And really get in front of a lot of people like you couldn't have before.
It's really amazing. I mean, I definitely can testify to this one-on-one connection you're automatically making. I did before the SEO Leverage podcast. I had 2 podcasts over the years in Spanish, and
Mm,
there were people, even once you're at 30, 40 episodes in, you kind of get some sort of feedback, right? It might not be somebody
yeah.
ringing your doorbell every single day, but you get this, you talk to people and say, yeah, and by the way, I've been listening to all your episodes, right? And I know you think this way and that way about those things. And I'm like, hey, this is a stranger, right? First it
Yeah.
was a little bit creepy. I was like, okay, where exactly did we meet?
Yep.
But it's really this feeling, right? You listen to this person for ultimately for hours, right? And
Yeah.
you get a feeling for how they would answer probably, or how they would think. And it's really this connection is amazing. And I definitely want to also talk about AI a little bit more. But first, what a little bit about strategy. How would you, if you think about all the things we should be doing in marketing, right? And it's
Mhm.
kind of overwhelming. I have my moments where I say, yeah, I should be recording videos, I should be on Instagram, I should be publishing case studies on LinkedIn, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Short videos are really good, right? Maybe
Mhm.
podcasts, yeah, absolutely. Where does a podcast fit in an overall digital marketing strategy?
That's a great question because I get overwhelmed as well, even with a system and marketing. Like there's a lot of predictable things that myself and my team do. And yeah, we always get the shiny object. We're like, oh, threads now, Instagram threads. That's a new hot thing. Let's go jump there and put my whole attention there.
Mhm.
But so for me, like the marketing strategy that's blown me away over the years is podcasting. And it started for me 13 years ago. I just finally looked back at the first time I created a podcast. It wasn't this specific show or Hustle and Flowchart. That one is 7 years old. So it's the most consistent marketing strategy I've used for, well, now almost 13 years. There was a little gap in a few different shows, but that's where it opened my eyes where, oh my gosh, I can create not only a solo episode where it's talking about maybe a topical thing or doing a series of episodes, which is very powerful. But when you get a guest into a show, now we have the opportunity to cherry pick exactly the type of person we want to have a chat with and know that that person, and this can go for guesting or on your own show, that you now are self-selecting literally the audience and the person you want to get in front of and know the type of people that they have that are paying attention to them, and they probably will share it around or at least do some kind of effort to spread the word about you and also what you're trying to put out into the world. And you're literally talking to their most engaged audience. And then where I like to take it a step further is let's have a great conversation, but also get to know each other and help each other after the show. Let's refer each other's services.
Mhm.
Let's refer to another show that that person or guest should be on. So we're all kind of compounding our efforts together. And with podcasting, the reason I like it is that you could do video and audio captured all at once, but that can turn into I mean, I don't know, a million might be too much, but a lot of different things out. You can hit all those different platforms and channels
Mhm.
if you have a plan and strategy to actually execute. That's
I
where I
think,
think like the AI tools are so helpful. Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people are not strategic enough, and probably myself either, on how you reach out or who you reach out at which moment in time or which moment in your growth journey. Just
Mhm.
considering that you probably get in front of their audience because they are flattered that they were interviewed. Just thinking about this for a while and say, okay, who would actually be beneficial for your brand if their crowd
Mhm.
would actually know a little bit more about you. I think a lot of people are not as strategic. A lot of people are on platforms to get like just fill their guest list and make sure they record something every week to get those episodes out. And it's very
Yeah.
similar to when I check out blogs from an SEO perspective here at SEO Leverage, where we say, okay, a lot of those blogs have been published just to publish something, and a lot of interviews are done just to have another interview. So there's
It's
no
true.
strategy,
Yeah.
there's no bonding, there is no relationship. It's just another interview. I've been invited to interviews. I did a few of them, and then I just stopped because if
Mhm.
there's no connection whatsoever, I just happen to pop up in their feed in whatever tool, and they
Mhm.
just say, yeah, Gert Mellak, SEO Leverage, yeah, let's see what he has to say. Um, Definitely, there's no impact at all. It's just a waste of time for everybody involved.
Yep.
So I'd rather have people probably publish fewer podcasts and but really make this a little bit more strategic. What are you seeing?
100%. I agree completely. And with the strategy, and I'll definitely share a strategy I have that allows me to plan ahead. And this is something I've been using for years. But yeah, going back to your point, it's well, most people don't even fill their episodes actually and consistently publish. So if you're at that point, even if you're just trying to fill episodes, you're doing more than most people would. But yeah, you're right. Where strategy is where it's all about, and just for the reasons like we talked about, because when you're publishing your content, any content, blog content as well, you want to know the audience you're chatting to, or you're trying to attract, and the problems they might be facing, and really dive into how you can give the best value. And yeah, if you're just scattershotting the shows that you want to guest on, or even the guests that you're bringing on your show, then you're doing everybody a disservice. And it's very easy to change that, circumvent that, and like plan ahead. And the way, like, one of my strategies is using this Dream 100 concept.
Hmm.
And it was Chet Holmes, I believe, originally that dubbed the term Dream 100. Definitely not taking credit for that, but the idea is to think in advance and think about the type of guests. If you have a podcast, who do you want on, and maybe why? Maybe put at least for yourself, like, why are these people the ones? And
Hmm.
little hint: reach for the moon, like go to the top, try to get the biggest guests, because they're really not that much more difficult than anyone else on the planet.
It's
um, yeah, and because there's a second side of this strategy. If you feel like, it's just because he's been in the game for a while doing it, like, no, hold on. So on the guesting side, think about the podcast that you want to go on, the different shows, because the way I like to see it is that's a stage. It's a virtual stage that you get to cherry pick and literally get one-on-ones, 30 to 45, an hour long, of just you and the guest talking with the audience, one-to-one type of style. It's better than in person for a lot of, I mean, because then you're talking to a mass and you're kind of not really connecting one-to-one.
mhm,
Well, you can do that here. So
absolutely.
the Dream 100 is like, let's list 100 names, or it could be less or more, of each of those columns. So you're prepared and you kind of know where you're going with your plan. There's a second step, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts
No,
on
this
that
is the
already.
Dream 100 that comes up so often. I've heard it in so many different ways. It's funny you bring it up for podcasting as well. I've heard it obviously like for dream clients, that you put up like the dream clients you really want to connect, work with, the people you want to connect with, the partners you want to reach out to. I've heard it in different contexts, and whoever I've heard working it actively was
Hmm.
really happy with this concept. So I'm working on a list myself here for our own purposes, and it's really pretty much that just start following those people. You get some comments back. You can just establish a
Yeah.
little bit of a relationship. You kind of make them know your name somehow. You
Yeah.
need to probably insist sometimes a little bit. I don't know how you go about it. But what I really like about it is it's the intention, right? It's a clear intentionality. I want to be in front of this. I want to connect with this person first of all, and I want to have a chance and potentially establish a relationship, get in front of their audience, maybe do something together. A lot of things can happen down the road. I just
Mm.
got asked to consult with a client from 10 years ago. 10 years
Wow.
after the last project, they reach out and say, hey, we don't want to hire more SEO people. Can you do the consulting for us? And of
Hmm.
course, I'm happy to do this. Get a couple of projects, but you never know where those things go, right? And as long as you have this long-term focus, and Dream 100 is not something you're going to probably tick off in a year. It's just
No.
like a long-term game. Whatever supports this long-term focus, I think, is absolutely a great strategy. But I'm curious about the step two now.
Yeah, yeah. Step two. Well, definitely your approach of being active. Follow these people. Definitely, I think that's a great step. Follow them on social media, start commenting, liking their posts, and showing up in their world. But even you don't even necessarily need to do that. That would definitely help. But what I like to do and help automate this process is to put these names in a Google Sheet. So
Mhm.
it's specifically a Google Sheet works for the strategy here. So, the two tabs on the bottom, one for the shows or the guests, and then one for the shows you want to guest on. And then what I would do is link that, and you could put a description, and I'll give you a little PDF at the end of this
Mhm.
podcast
Oh,
where
that's
you actually
amazing.
see, yeah, you can see an example, or maybe I'll just shout it out really quick. So if people wanted to grab it,
Absolutely.
hustleandflowchart.com. Yeah, hustleandflowchart.com/SEO leverage. So name of the show.
Appreciate it.
And that'll take you right there. It's totally free. And there's an example of my Dream 100 list in that PDF, so you can model that. Please don't copy it, but model. And um, I've seen a couple people copy. I'm like, come on, I'm sure you want to chat with other people than just what I have. So, but the point there is use a sheet, and then what I like to do when I've completed enough, at least, put it in your email signature. And a lot of people, not everyone, and you might not as well, are be doing this, but if you have a Google email service, Gmail or Workspaces, I think is what they're calling it now, G Suite, that now is going to pre-populate when you send to other people who are also using a Google email.
Mhm,
It's going to do this little like preview below the email that looks like an attachment. So that just entices people to want to click that thing, or at least be a little curious about what is this
mhm.
thing that Joe or Gert just attached to my email to.
Yeah.
And this could be literally, I'm just talking about like any email you send to anyone. It
Mhm,
could be your CPA, it could be your account, anyone, an old client. And the point here is that you're automating the fact that you're putting that in front of more people,
mhm.
and you never know who's connected to the people you want to get connected with or to.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they might not know the person, but they might kind of help you get a little closer, or they might just refer you someone that's similar, that you didn't
Mhm,
have on the list, which is a win as well, because they're helping you kind of target and narrow the audience that you're looking
mhm.
for.
It's so important really to have a little bit of help to get close to people, right? I mean, you get approached,
Hmm.
even as a small podcast like ours, for example, we get approached every single day,
Cool.
right?
Yep.
I hate it.
I know.
Yeah, I
If you don't have
really,
a system for it, it's
I would really love to like choose my guests or have my own list and you get approached by the guests as an SEO agent, you get approached by leak sellers, you get approached, I don't know,
Mm,
20, 30 emails every day that are just from this kind of nature. But when you really get this referral and say, hey, maybe you should talk to Joe, because he really knows a lot about AI and podcasting and could probably help you, it's a completely different game, right? And very
yeah,
often I get asked by podcasts, who else could we have on the show? Who else could you connect us with, etc. Because ultimately you just want to have some sort of upfront, I guess, guarantee where it's like, we had a good conversation. Probably this person, if they refer somebody to me, this might already be a little bit pre-qualified and they have an idea what the who the audience is and so. So I really
yep,
like this. I really like this approach of the Dream 100. This is amazing. This is amazing.
yeah, man.
So you have your strategy. You have podcasting as an essential element. Podcasting, I personally always see it like an investment more than a marketing expense. I mean, the short videos are great, but ultimately, short video has a very short time to be active, right? You can obviously
That's right.
republish it, etc. But what I'm seeing with my podcast is that even the first episodes, and they were really, really bad. I don't recommend anybody to listen to those.
Everybody's yeah.
Um, but they still grow in downloads, right? They still grow in downloads. So there are some people who can live with my accent and they can live with a boring SEO show and they still listen to this. And by the way, I appreciate everybody really bearing up
Hey, it's
uh,
flavors for
with
everybody. It's
me.
okay.
Absolutely, yeah. You never know who you resonate with, right? I'm absolutely sure out of 100 people, I might only resonate with a few, but they are definitely the ones that listen to episode one, and I do appreciate it. So this, you put out a show, but it's something that sticks for a while, right? Are you still
Yeah,
getting on Hustler Flowchart is a big podcast? Are you still getting downloads for those first shows?
I am. I am. It's wild, and you never know which one is going to take off and get that organic. And sometimes it's tough to know how or why
Hmm.
it's happening. But yeah, to your point, I want to go back to the numbers thing, because
Hmm.
you could have a tiny show or you could be guesting on a show. I mean, it's tough to know numbers of a guesting opportunity because
Hmm.
they're not public download numbers, but you can kind of get an idea from some of these
Hmm.
websites online. But the point is, yeah, you could have 100 people listening, but then maybe one is the dream client that you've been looking for, and they just connected with something you said,
Hmm.
and that maybe that person becomes a client for life or whatever it might be. Maybe they become a referral partner for you or sets up a new JV deal that you didn't see coming. all
Yeah.
these things have happened for me. And like when our show was tiny, at first I started it with my old business partner, Matt Wolf. Like that literally was why we kept it going, because for one, we had a really bad, the first podcast we started, we had no systems. We didn't like time block our recording. We didn't have this follow-up system that worked and really focused on the networking aspect of podcasting. And because there's so many things that are like not the obvious benefits of just publishing an episode. I think
Hmm.
that's the obvious thing, and trying to get people to share and all this. But it's like, well, if we just focus really intently on this specific opportunity and then not only create great content, but like let's extend that and make a connection with that person and try to connect with their audience deeper, connect with them deeper. You could have, yeah, 100 people listening, 50 people listening, and it could be like the best opportunity for you, even better than one that has, thousands of listeners per episode. So,
It's
yeah, that's
fascinating, yeah. It's fascinating. What I really remember from the first podcast we did together was this felt like a professional studio. It was
yeah, yeah,
such a professional to say. Obviously, you had your backdrop, and I think you just started using it, and you and Matt were obviously very synchronized already. I don't know if you have some signs below the table or something like this when somebody speaks and when the other one has to listen.
we
But
just kind of thought
yeah,
similar. Yeah.
you guys are just really connected. I think it's when you have those commentators or commentaries on the football games, and they
Yep.
just know when everybody else needs to say something. So this felt really really professional. But what I also liked was how you and your team really approached this entire production and
Yeah.
post production. I would say how you leverage every single bit out of every show with all the links to all the resources, to obviously affiliate links when you have an affiliate agreement, to how to really monetize this. And I think you had like some content also behind like a login or something like this, if I remember
Yep.
this correctly. So you kind of really spend a lot of effort, and definitely back then at least time in the post production process. And this has, I guess, with AI changed a little bit. What are
Yep.
those main changes now that we have like 10 new AI tools every single day? What does a modern post production look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, back before a lot of these automated tools, and let's be honest, it's like machine learning. AI is kind of, but yeah, it's if we can automate a lot of this post production, it should be predictable, because that's how it's going to bring you predictable results then, or at least start to compound your efforts. And keeping in mind that it's not just going to help your show, it's going to help your brand in general to show up in more places. And really, the goal is to attract the highest quality leads, the people that want to follow you a little deeper, and I think of it always as a journey that I want to take people on. Is like, this could be the very first time someone's listening to both of us. Someone might
Mhm,
have just discovered the show for the first time, probably hearing me for the first time. So I'm always thinking, what's the next best step that I can take them on? And
mhm,
I'm thinking that as a guest. I'm sure you're thinking of that as a host as well, and that's where post production can really help. Let's call it a show host, but also as a guest. Keep this in mind. You can do this same kind of thing as the post production. The basics are things like create a show notes page or a blog post
mhm,
around your appearance in your episode. There's YouTube. There's all these other platforms that you can extend that. And yeah, it used to be a lot of manual labor and a lot of working with people, and there's still people work, but now with tools like one of my favorite tools is Cast Magic that I've been using,
mhm,
and it's kind of like Chat GPT prompts all packaged together for podcasters.
mhm,
And you can also use it if you're a YouTuber or a coach. I'm finding, or even just on calls, it's going to help you at least take the next best steps as a producer or as a content creator, and then share that with the world even further.
mhm,
So the big thing here is create a system. I think you got to have a workflow with all of this. If you don't have a workflow at like a very basic level, it's tough to be consistent with even producing a podcast.
mhm.
And that was the thing. It's called pod fade, when a podcast starts, maybe gets 5 episodes in and then just drops off.
Yeah.
So you don't want that, because the whole point is to stay in the game longer, because you'll get those compounded results and more opportunities that way.
Absolutely, and I know a lot of guests actually check how many episodes you have, how long you have been doing this. They might check some SEO statistics even to see if you're actually doing something or getting some traction here. How many people search for your podcast, just to really decide who you go with, where you think you're having an impact. If somebody the other day somebody reached out, first of all they weren't relevant, so I wouldn't have gone on the podcast anyway. But they
Hmm.
were 15 episodes in. I was like, I really don't know if they're going to be 17, right? I'm number 16,
Hmm.
so I'm not sure if there's going to be a number 17. And then they probably just take it down at some point. So you obviously the consistency pays off. And
Yeah,
it just means that the more podcasts they create afterwards, the more downloads you're going to get down the road, right? And it might just
that's
be
right.
someone listening to this 6 months from now or 12 months from now and then say, hey, this actually resonates with what I'm doing right now. We had this the other day. We had somebody listening to a show where I talked about branded searches. And I said, yeah, I immediately went to Google and typed in my brand name, and there is this competitor showing up. We need to do something about it. And they reached out and said, hey, this was like the right timing. Let's have a conversation, right? And you really never know when those things happen. And
That's true.
it's really great. So how many people do you think somebody would need to have in order to account for this post production? Is this something a VA can do now with the new tools?
Yeah, so I'll describe mine, and I
Yeah.
feel like yeah, because now I think I'm up to almost 530 episodes, which is
Wow.
blowing my mind. Yeah, it's like I got to update the number on the front of my website. It's more. I got to get like an active ticker or something. I got to
Still,
figure out how to do that.
is it still saying 25?
No, no, I think it says like 501 or something, but still, yeah. I'm like, I had to hit that 500 mark, 25. But yeah, so I have, let's see, I have an ops manager slash project manager type
Hmm.
gal, but she helps me with all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
You don't need that. You could really just use a VA, someone that helps you work the system. I mean, I guess before working the system, you want to create the system.
Hmm.
So the system I use is Asana, and yeah, it's a Kanban style, so kind of like a Trello board where everything is in buckets and phases of the content production, but it also has all the post production elements as well. So the people I have working with me are a VA, ops manager, and an editor. I think you can you could probably do it all with a really good editor if they're
Hmm.
organized and can follow that system. You might need a graphics person, but at the end of the day, if you create some templates in Canva, that's what we do. You could probably have a VA even edit those. Because it's so simple now with a tutorial video with Loom, describe how to do it yourself, or
Hmm.
maybe hire someone to create templates for you. You
Yeah.
don't need to have like a full time, yeah, video editor or graphics editor unless you want to go really high quality.
Hmm.
So really having an editor, someone, because I wouldn't rely on AI and these tools to do all the editing for you. It could shortcut a lot of it. A really good tool is cleanvoice.ai is what we use.
Hmm.
That'll kind of like clean it up to 80%, let's say. But then an
Wow.
editor will still need to chop up the bits that, like, if you have to have a restart in a podcast or cut out a section, then that's what they primarily focus on.
Hmm. This is
Um,
amazing. This is amazing.
yeah.
It makes things easier, right? When I did my first podcast, we spent a lot of time. I think we even started transcribing manually back then, which was a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit crazy. I figured out too late that there were already some automated tools that did at least a decent job.
Yeah.
So my poor team had to transcribe some of those stuff manually. But these days it seems doable, right? It's not such a big burden anymore to actually get started. Obviously, you need to put in the consistency then.
Yeah.
What are some ways? Imagine you have the system down. You have created your podcast. You have the system. You have the guests. How can you actually really leverage your podcast to the biggest advantage? I know you have a lot of info on your PDF, and we're going to link to it
Mhm.
over at seoleverage.com/podcast. This is episode 109. But I would love if you could share a couple of things for our listeners right now on how they can actually make the best use of the podcast they're having.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest, if we're thinking 80/20, to make the most out of your efforts, content, and this is if you have your own show or if you are guesting on others. I always want to preface that because it's not just speaking to podcasters,
Yeah.
because just a guesting strategy with no podcast is honestly great. It's an awesome
Mhm.
strategy. I would always go in there with a couple things in mind. Obviously, study the podcast and the topic, and make sure you're doing that ahead of time before you guest or have a guest on. Have an intention with the theme, and really, focus on the listener, the one-to-one listener, and remember, and that's why I keep referring to, hey, if you're a podcaster or not a
Hmm.
podcaster, I want to make sure people are feeling heard and connected to the message. So have that throughout and figure out the value points and things, but also have a call to action. Like, have something prepared, as I do here and have done. You can have something that allows people to take that next step with you,
Hmm.
no matter what appearance you're doing on a show or on your own. Have some kind of call to action that is their best next step, that solves their next problem or issue or whatever it might be, curiosity, after listening to the episode. And so the way I like to do that is, you have a landing page. It could just be a standard one that you use for all of your shows, and use Pretty Link or something like that to customize the
Hmm.
URL, kind of like what I've done here.
Yeah.
It's like hustleandflowchart.com/SEO leverage. Shameless plug, but
Awesome.
that's the idea. Yeah. And I would just keep it that basic. So you have that, and then now you can track, but really that's not the point. You can track your effectiveness, but really it's just giving an easy next step for people. Most people don't have a call to action. They don't have something to capture the people that are most interested. And if you don't want to do a lead magnet thing, well, you can give out your email address if you're that extreme. But no, I think that's a great way to connect.
Yeah.
Some people have given out phone numbers even, or you can say something like the first 5 people that reach out can have a strategy session with me.
Hmm.
20-minute strategy session where we could talk this through, which I'll offer to your folks as well, because I,
Appreciate
I, I
it.
like to chat with people. So
Yeah.
reach out.
No,
Yeah.
this is amazing. This is amazing. This definitely appreciate this, and I'm sure somebody is going to take you up on this. It's
Yeah.
funny how this theme. The more people I talk to on this show, and we just had Stefan Spencer mentioning something very
Yeah.
similar here. This intentionality, right? And I asked him because he was like doing all kinds of things in his life, obviously, and many big achievements. And he said when it comes down to intentionality, right? So
Mm.
whatever you're ultimately focusing on, what you want to achieve, do it like with the really right intention. And
Yeah.
I keep thinking about this a lot. I keep thinking about this a lot, like private, in business, in conversations with my kids.
Hmm.
It's if you really try to do this with a purpose in mind, a lot of good things seem to happen, right?
Yeah, man. And I feel like for one, I feel like it's easier because it calms down at least my monkey mind, the one that likes to try new things and
Hmm.
experiment and meet new people. But it's very quick. It's easy to stop doing the boring work or the boring things. And that's where I feel like intentionality, especially like for podcasting or business or SEO, you're intentional because you have a goal, you have like a north star. You should have kind of an idea of where you want to head with your time, or your kids for that
Yeah.
matter. Because same thing here. Like, there's a reason why you want to put focus in. So what's that reason? And then, like, if you focus there with intention, you compound your efforts. And I feel like that snowball just gets a little bigger, gets easier to roll, and it's should be going the right direction if you're intentional and checking in with yourself too.
How easy is it to change your intentionality over the course of a podcast? So you
Good question.
might start with one intention in mind, right? And then your business might shift, you might shift to different products. How easy is it really to make this shift, and can you actually bring your audience across?
Mhm. So this is close to my heart because Hustle and Flowchart has
Thought so.
changed its intention like 7 or 8 times, probably once a year
Mhm.
at least. And I'm in a new iteration of it now. So obviously I had a podcast host, or co-host, Matt Wolf,
Mhm.
before, for the first like 5.5 years or whatever, 6, and now it's my show. It's a different dynamic, but I've also made it. It's a similar purpose, but there's like a deeper. It's changed slightly,
Mhm.
and it's more for, where I want to see things going in the trend. So it's possible, yes. So I've carried people over into a whole variety of places. I would say the most dramatic one we did last year was going into blockchain, Web3, and NFTs, and
There were a lot
That
of
one I would not.
discussions that you don't even know about. Well, why are they doing this? How do they do this? Why
Yeah.
don't they start a separate podcast and continue the good thing they had going? I have heard from a lot
She.
of people all kinds of things.
I know. Oh man, it honestly it hurts me a little bit, but that's a separate thing. So that's learned from my I wouldn't call it a mistake because I learned a
I
lot,
don't.
but yeah.
I think
It,
it wasn't for me. It was a testament to how close you and Matt were to the cutting edge of everything, and
yeah.
kind of whenever there is a new thing up there, you definitely went all in. And this
Yeah.
is
Sure.
whatever new thing came up, was it affiliate marketing back then or NFTs or whatever it was, crypto,
Yep.
you were definitely there. You definitely had an idea what was going on. You probably had the most important influencers or influential people on your podcast when it came
Mhm.
to that topic. So I think in hindsight, I was a little bit shocked, honestly, last year. But in hindsight, it's just continuing this trend. So, okay, if there's something big, everybody needs to know about it. And we are the ones that are going to, or now you are the
Mm.
one that's going to inform everybody about it. So it's like a little bit of a news show kind of
Okay.
thing, I guess, where says that
Yeah.
now Hustle and Flowchart is going to be the platform where you are going to know everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, it felt like that, and still, yes, it's very topical, timely stuff. But at the
Mhm,
same time, yeah, the new angle is let's also bring it down a notch and slow
mhm,
down and really get intentional. Back to what we just talked about,
mhm,
and that's where it it was intentional with some of these changes, but some of them, like the one last year that we made, or I guess year and a half or so into Web3, that was very much a like change everything and not really give much of a warning. Not, and we thought about all this. We actually had a
mhm.
separate podcast
Yeah.
that we were going to start, but we're like, let's just take our audience and be the
Mhm,
bridge too. Which all of it, and I love your perspective. And you're not the only one that has said, yeah. And it was James Schramko, our mutual mentor and coach. He told me straight up. He was like, "You left the castle with the gold bars in it over here, your podcast, and you went to go play off in the woods and try something new." And he's absolutely correct. Not
mhm,
saying that the woods thing wasn't a bad thing, because I feel like that helped Matt and I see clearly about what we wanted to do and
mhm.
our intentions.
Yeah.
And you know, now Matt's gone into the AI world and has been crushing it on YouTube, and that's what he's been wanting to do. And
Mhm.
he's great. So if there's anyone you want to follow around AI, go check out Matt Wolf on YouTube. You can't miss him. So
Definitely right. These days, he's pretty definitely taking off here.
yeah, and I gotta prop him up. He's my brother from another mother. Like I've known the guy for like 20 years. So
Mhm,
yeah, and we still to this day are friends. And um, but yeah, back to the show and changing things. What I would suggest is definitely make a through line somehow.
mhm,
Something that connects, because you don't want to ignore the audience. I think that's the big thing, and that's where I feel like we did a little bit, is we ignored and we didn't listen enough to what people wanted out
mhm.
of a show and a consistent. And I'm talking our email list as well, our business model, our podcast. It's like I think of all that as kind of this cohesive network, this
Right.
system, and that's how you should. That's why how podcast becomes powerful is you start to think of the connections and your efforts,
Mhm.
and literally in the middle for me, the hub is a podcast and always has been. So
That's amazing.
that's that's when James, I got to give him credit everywhere and publicly, and I've given it to him privately as well, is like, thank you for bringing me back to the
Definitely.
podcast, because it's so many benefits.
It's got a good way to be grounded and stay grounded and see everything in the long term. Has been
It
bringing me
hurts a
back
little bit though,
quite a
man.
few times. It hurts, but
I'm not
ultimately,
gonna lie.
once you calm down, that's probably right.
Yeah,
So
100%.
I
You're right.
really, Joe, this was great. I really appreciate it. We have been through so much stuff, so people can still start a podcast. They need to obviously be consistent. They need to create the systems. They have this intention in mind. Guesting is a really good option if you can't do your own show, to still
Yep.
leverage it for relationships. Make sure you obviously then are prepared for whatever recording so people can take something away. We're going to link to your checklist here. I was just going
Mhm.
through it, and this is amazing material. I'm going to share it with my team as well. Thank you so
Cool.
much. And then really make leverage also the AI tools. It is possible to do this maybe with a VA or to right now to really get
Yeah.
this up and running. Have something in the pipeline, and definitely, yeah, probably loyal to your audience or your audience's expectation over time. Or if you make a shift, be careful, bring them over slowly,
Yeah.
explain what you're doing, maybe take them by the hand, talk to James Remco before.
Get feedback. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Consult with James Schramko for sure. Yep.
This was a
Uh,
great show. Is there anything you think a current podcaster or future podcaster should also take into account that we haven't talked about?
you summed it up well. I would say I would remind people, yeah, have an intention and have a call to action. Definitely, think of like a direct response marketer and take
Hmm.
them to the next step. SEO your stuff like crazy. I'll just say that right now. And I got to give you, actually, now that I'm on your stage talking with your folks, you helped me tremendously to transition my website. It used to be at
Hmm.
evergreenprofits.com. Now it's at hustleandflowchart.com to sync up with the brand. And that's something Matt and I wanted to do for like 6 years, 5 years, and we never
Hmm.
pulled the plug. We never actually did it, and it was with the help of Greg from Studio
Hmm.
One Designs, mutual buddy, and I know he's been a guest,
Yeah,
and also you and James, of course. I feel like you guys have been the trio, which is interesting because James has connected all of us, and
absolutely. Yeah. He's in
and
the middle of this network. Yeah.
he always is. And yeah, so you helped me with that migration,
Hmm.
and SEO has always been the biggest driver, organic traffic for my podcast growth. So I get to give props to you for always giving me the best practices of the time, and I'm actively changing my show notes right now to reflect your model because you know that way better than I do. I'm just going to put it
Appreciate
into a
it.
system.
Oh, we're
Yeah.
definitely happy to help. Where I always kind of have a little bit of a clash with podcasters is when I tell them, look, your podcast is just an add-on.
Yeah.
It's just for an
They
SEO,
don't
the
like that.
podcast is just an add-on. There is no reason why to cover the entire page with podcast icons and players and I don't know what. But this is where we then have to balance out like the ego and podcaster
Yeah.
feelings with SEO a little bit. But yeah, I think there's just no other way to. Or what is your experience? I have one more question before we wrap
You're
this up.
fine.
What's your
Yeah.
experience with ads to grow a podcast?
So we've done a lot of it. I've not done them recently, but there's a lot of ways to run ads.
Hmm.
So shoot, we've run them on Facebook, Google, retargeting. Uh, I guess there's different ways to look at it. So you can run ads directly to your show,
Hmm.
and you can actually pay for ad spots on like even Spotify now allows you to do that for audio.
Hmm.
But there's even podcast players like Overcast.fm is one where you can advertise directly on their podcast
Hmm.
platform. And so that's a way to grow your show immediately or pretty immediately and get fairly targeted. Usually it's by category. They're not usually as tricky as like Facebook ads or
Hmm.
Google. It's a little bit more archaic, but it's kind of a good thing.
Yeah.
So check those out. There's a lot of paid opportunities,
Hmm.
but then thinking as now a direct response marketer, because at the end of the day, yeah, I'm a podcaster, but I'm a business owner. I'm thinking of it as a holistic thing, and I think
Hmm.
that's what you should do as well. Podcast is just a medium. Yeah, it's a marketing channel,
Hmm.
and so yeah, with retargeting, done a ton of that. Especially with an offer. You have someone take them to a landing page or an offer that they see, follow up with them.
Hmm.
Follow them up on Google, Facebook, wherever else. Get them on an email list. There's a lot of stuff like that. So that's yeah, paid ads. They work. Just experiment because they're not all equal, especially when you're trying to grow a show through a platform that way.
That's amazing. No, I appreciate your feedback here. We always try to start where the intention is, where somebody's actually searching for what we are just talking about. But
Yeah.
obviously, just getting visibility, say, hey, there is another podcast about such and such. Maybe listen in, check out the episodes. Maybe there are a few episodes you're interested in. Seems like a really, really good entry point to get especially a newer podcast off the ground, right? This
Yeah,
is
yeah,
amazing.
And think about the connection you're making. It's like
Mhm.
they see the genuine you, they get your story.
Mhm.
So it's creating a bond that I haven't been able to experience else other than meeting up with someone face to face.
Yeah.
But why not do this virtually?
This is
Thanks,
amazing.
man.
Thank you so much, Joe. This was so much value. I
Yeah,
feel we
thank
could
you.
talk for another hour, but I'm going to save my questions for another episode about podcasting if
Awesome.
you're up for it. Thank you so much, Joe
Hmm.
Fier over at hustleandflowchart.com. If you're interested in reading the show notes, getting the tool links, and obviously the link to Joe's great cheat sheet here on how to leverage your podcast and your guesting, head over to seoleverage.com/podcast episode 109. My name is Gert Mellak. This was Joe Fier. Thank you so much.